Hello and welcome to Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbins, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global, and I invite you to get comfortable and listen in on candid conversations I have with fascinating women from around the globe. Business leaders, entrepreneurs, humanitarians, athletes, and a whole lot of regular people. Tune in as they let their guard down and open up on aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure success, and what they have learned along the way. These conversations aim to inspire you to embrace opportunities and possibilities beyond the limits of your imagination. Reclaim your power, strength, and vulnerability. Stand in your truth and propel yourself towards the life you dream to live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Women's Biz Podcast. Annie Gibbins here. I am thrilled to have you join us today. And also joining us is Scherrie L. So welcome to the program, Scherrie.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Such a joy to have you on the show today. And we are going to delve into the world of asset protection and strategic planning, everybody. So you're going to love hearing from Scherrie. She is an attorney and an asset protection coach, something that we often just don't think about. So I'm so glad that Scherrie is on our program today. She specialises in guiding entrepreneurs to seamlessly align their business and estate plans, erecting, I love this, impenetrable fortresses around their assets. Oh my gosh, if we've got some assets and when we have them, we certainly don't want them going anywhere. So she's got over a decade of experience monitoring and advising entrepreneurs just like you guys at various stages of their venture. And so I'm so excited to hear from her today. So once again, welcome. And to all of our listeners, if you've got a question, pop it in the chat. We will get back to you after the show. You can definitely reach out to us, so ask some questions for us. So Scherrie, let's talk about this finance. I love an opportunity to talk about finance and asset protection because it seriously is an area that most of us just willfully hope it's all going to be looked after. So what kind of legal structures or principles do entrepreneurs need to prioritize to start safeguarding both their personal and their business assets at even the early stages of their ventures?
Well, first, I'm going to tell you the two words that attorneys love to say. It depends. Now, usually when I'm counseling someone and we're getting ready to talk about your asset protection structure, I have a couple of questions that I ask, and this is my decision tree. We start out with the type of business. Is it a brick and mortar business? Is it an e-commerce business? Because that's going to kind of dictate some of the advice that I give. We also like to talk about whether you are a public facing entity, which means that, you may have a brand, your face or someone else associated with it, or do you need anonymity? Because if that's the case, we may file that in Delaware, Wyoming, or Nevada. And then we just go through a series of other things. But what I do with merging your business plan with your estate plan, you really have to have a base understanding of personal finance. And so even before we even talk about the business side, we make sure that your estate plan will support what you're trying to do with your business.
And that's because the biggest risk is losing your own personal assets, your estate, which is then linked to the business often. And you need to obviously have a structure, a legal structure that's going to protect that. Is that right?
Exactly. And if you're someone who does not have a lot of experience with business, you may either knowingly or unknowingly commingle your business and personal assets. So if you have I would love for you to have a strong foundation with personal finance, but at least a basic understanding on what you need to do. And you do have some businesses that don't understand business credit, or they have not established business credit. So you may have things that you do with your personal credit to support your business. And we just try to separate those things.
Yeah. So those of you who have already just started a business, you might be an early stage entrepreneur and you haven't really thought about this. I actually encourage you to make sure, you should have done it when you first started setting up your business. Make sure that you really have separated your personal and your professional. If not, you need to be definitely reaching out and getting some expertise in that area, because you don't want to lose the house, do you?
So, and just kind of circling back around because you asked me about structures.
Mhm.
Anyone who's in business, I like to start people with a 3 entity structure. So think about it this way. For every operating company that you have, you should have 3 entities that work together to support that one operating company. And if you look at it like a house, the roof may be a will or trust centered estate plan. Some people prefer to have a will, some a trust, but you can actually have a trust and a will working together as part of your estate plan. But that's how you protect your family and you have generational wealth.
Mm.
And that plan, if it's a trust or a series of entities, will own your holding company. And then you'll have an operating company that you actually work from. And if you are a widget maker, you create all of your widgets out of that operating company. So we start there as a base. And that
Mm.
really helps you with anonymity if you need it. It helps you with limited liability because you're only going to have liability with the operating company. And it may help you with some tax deference as well.
Mm, mm. Great advice. There's going to be so many gems and gold nuggets for all of you. So I hope you're writing this down as Scherrie speaks today. So our dream is then our business will grow, our personal wealth will grow. And then when you're at that stage of growth, which is exciting as you get older, you've also then got to strike a balance between how your business expands and how your personal wealth expands. So do you have any advice on how to integrate the legal planning for that?
I do. So I'm going to borrow this from the late, great Stephen Covey.
Mm.
Begin with the end in mind.
Mm.
People think about exiting their business. They really, a lot of times think about, well, I'm going to sell the business probably. But that's not always an exit. An exit could be a bankruptcy,
Mm.
whether it's a dissolution of the business or a restructuring. If it's a partnership, an exit could be the dissolution of the partnership. If you have a sole proprietorship, which is not a legal structure at all, you're just using your own personal credit and your name, your death is an exit. And for
Mm.
any, yeah, and for anyone who may have taken their entire retirement as a W-2 employee and put it into a business and now they're self-employed, you have to think about when you exit that business, how do you not only recoup the money that you put in for retirement, but how do you grow and scale that? So
Mm.
I really try to help people work backwards. Before you even turn the lights on in the new business, think about what your exit is going to be.
Yeah, and I think fantastic advice. A lot of people are in two different camps here. Some of them are the classic startups that go, I'm starting this business to one day sell it for a great profit, and they're not as emotionally involved in the why of the business. They see it as a business opportunity. Many, particularly my followers, are for passion type people, purpose driven people who have their businesses and go, but this is my baby. And often with that situation, you're more at risk of not planning for that long-term plan of, well, what's going to happen when you're not the face of the business, you're not in the business. Do you find that with your clients?
Oh yeah. And there are like you said, the passion driven people who don't consider selling the business. They're thinking that I'm just going to run this business until the day that I, die. Then my kids are going to pick it up and run it. But an exit looks so different for everybody. So
Mm.
you just really have to plan for all those events that may happen.
So when it comes to succession planning, especially in family businesses and estate transitions, what key legal frameworks and principles should entrepreneurs focus on during that journey?
So I advise people, regardless of the type of entity you have, but especially if it's a venture within the family, everything needs to be memorialized with an agreement.
Mm.
Because, say, for instance, I'm in the States. So each state has different law regarding LLCs or limited liability companies in terms of the way that they're handled in the event of your death. So in some states, if you have a single member LLC, you only have 90 days for your family to actually dissolve the company and transfer the assets. But if
Wow.
you, yeah, but if you are a multiple member LLC, that changes. Okay. And if you're a multiple member LLC that has a natural person versus an entity, because you know that you can have an entity that, is an owner of another LLC, you just have
Mm.
all these rules. So what happens is if you have agreements, regardless of what you're doing in the business. If you have agreements, it works a lot better for your estate. And if there's a dispute,
Mm.
and yeah.
Sorry, and too often there are disputes, right? Because that's what happens, human nature. Suddenly you think things have always been clear, they've been the way that it's been run. There was an implied belief about something, but when others come in and you've unfortunately passed, for example, other people will come in and go, well, what was actually written down? Is it legally binding? How will that work? And that must be just so common amongst so many businesses that you're then trying to help them get clarity in something that would have been helpful if they clarified that in the early stages.
Definitely. And one piece of advice that is not popular, but it's definitely necessary that I give people, consider, if you do not have a prenup, getting a postnup before you start a business with your spouse. Because think about it. When you first get together, you're probably the most in love, you're the friendliest, you're the most generous. It's not until you hit a bump in the road that you may start to look at your partner, at the corner of your eye, like, I don't know if I want to share all this. So those are some things as well that help, because one of those exits may be a divorce if it's a family business and a partnership.
Yes, exactly. Oh, goodness me, my head is racing. It must get so, so complicated, particularly when one's the face of the business, then you're in a partner relationship and then things go south. Oh, my goodness. How do you also help people protect their assets by diversifying their interests in for long-term security? So many of us go, oh, everything's in the house, or then everything's in the business, where it's definitely generally a good idea to diversify. What's your perspective on that?
Well, building a business is like, raising a child. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a team to build a business. And so as an asset protection coach, I'm like the quarterback for your asset protection team. Now, I am a licensed attorney in the state of Mississippi, but on your team as an asset protection coach, I work with the individuals that already service you. So if you're in business, you're paying insurance premiums for something. So I work with your insurance agent. You should be paying taxes annually. I work with your tax preparer or your tax planner, your financial advisor. And pretty much what we do as a team, we look at you from every angle based on what our role is. And we provide the advice and counsel that's going to move your business forward.
So as those people approaching retirement or more lifestyle planning, I'll say it's probably the same, slightly different. So there's many that are, I'm not there yet of retirement, but I'm definitely into lifestyle planning. I'm changing my work-life balance quite a lot to then juggle, grandchildren coming on board, opportunities to travel more, things of that nature. So is that exactly what you help entrepreneurs be able to do, sort of support them in that lifestyle planning, how much things are going to cost and when they actually taper down from full-time to part-time, and then be able to make sure that they've got enough funds for that next phase of their journey while leaving a great estate for their family?
Yes, I do that in conjunction with their financial advisors. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, but what I do is, because I mainly work with entrepreneurs, I make sure that the structures that they have set up are sufficient, and whatever investments they do have are protected either within those structures, or that there is a game plan for succession in their estate plan.
Do you find that most people are prepared for what it's going to cost for their retirement years, or they have no idea how much it's actually going to cost? I'd love to know that.
Most of the people that I work with, it's not top of mind.
Yes.
Like, we're doing this today. We're trying to make sure that we have a sufficient amount, because like you said, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I work with are in their early stages. They're businesses that have not reached, 5 million in annual revenue, who may not have strong KPIs or standard operating procedures. Think about the person who is just great at making widgets, and that's what they do. And so they start out every day making the best widgets, but they really don't have a structure that supports scaling and growth. And that's pretty much who I've been working with.
Oh, fabulous. That's exactly who we have. A lot of our listeners are in that space. So, because when you started it, you're doing everything. You've got no time, or you feel you have no time to do all that infrastructure. You don't have to clone yourself yet. So, there's so much that you automatically just do yourself because you know how it's done. That's going to be a problem if you suddenly want to sell that business, or if unfortunately you passed away, because someone else can't then just come in and do that. And therefore, the value of that company is not what you think it is.
Exactly. And not only selling, but what if you need a line of credit?
I'd
There are
love to talk
yeah.
more about that. So when someone wants a line of credit, then what's going to happen? What are the questions that they're going to ask?
Well, the first thing that the bankers is going to look at, they're going to look at your cash reserves. They're going to look at your balance sheet. And generally, it's a 24-month look back period. It's great if you have an ongoing relationship. A lot of people know and understand that you have a credit score, a personal credit score and a business score, but people don't also know that there's a banking score. And it depends on like your daily balances, your deposits, how many times you've been in overdraft and things like that. And so that's additional information that you may not know that the bank is keeping up with. So if you're not monitoring your numbers, or maybe you're not making regular deposits, everything's in a safe or under your mattress, that's not the best place for that to be.
So we are getting tracked, everybody, listeners watching on YouTube, LinkedIn as well. We are being tracked. Our digital footprint is out there, whether we like it or not. So the message of this conversation is definitely to start getting serious about, your digital footprint in the world of finance and asset protection earlier than later. For those who've had a few little hiccups, they may have been bankrupt before, whatever. Can you start at any time? Can you rectify your footprint there?
Definitely. And the thing about bankruptcy, it's not fatal for your business, because think about it as a restructuring. And sometimes you're able to get a few other things done once you've gotten rid of the bad debt and actually have a clean slate. So, depending on the type of bankruptcy that you have, if it's a personal bankruptcy or a business reorganization, you still have other options available to you. I tell folks all the time, just have a plan. It does not have to be elaborate, but start making a plan, and treat your asset protection team kind of like a wellness visit. If you go and get a physical once a year, make a commitment to yourself and your business that at least once a year, you're going to meet with your advisors and work on a plan for your business.
Mm. Oh my goodness, I love this broaching on this topic of bankruptcy, actually, because we haven't done it before on this podcast. And it's an interesting one to sort of unpack, and particularly for the listeners. What they're hearing there is sometimes your business isn't going well. It's probably not going to go well unless some significant changes are made, which you may or may not have the time, money, energy to do. And so there can be a call with a financial advisor or an expert in this area to actually say, you know what, you're better becoming bankrupt there and actually then starting another business in a different way.
Exactly. And that's why, one exercise that I do with the people that I work with is called the 3 I's. And I guess at some point I'll give it a fancier name, but right now it's the 3 I's. We first identify your assets. You'd be amazed at how much stuff we own, and we just kind of, it's like a toy. You play with it and you put it in the corner and find something new. So when you identify your assets, and then you make an inventory of your assets. And this is super important because we're going to have 2 columns. One is going to be for your personal assets and one for your business assets. And the third I is you improve the classification of those. So say, for instance, you started a business, but you did not have business credit. And you purchased a vehicle that you're using in your business exclusively. What happens if you have an accident? Now, that person that you've been in the accident with, they're able to pierce the corporate veil and reach into your personal finances because that vehicle is in your personal name. So when we improve the classification of your assets, if you're using it in your business, we show you how to get it titled in your business name. We make sure that you have the proper coverage for it, that it's in the right entity. And just kind of circling back around to the bankruptcy conversation. If we set your structures up properly, you could file a business bankruptcy on an operating company, but you have ancillary companies that may do your staffing, they may hold your equipment. So all those vendors that actually service the operating company may not be affected. It may just
Mm,
be that one company, and you're able to rock and roll the next day with a brand new business.
mm. Fascinating conversation. What are the red flags for those listening in going, you know what, this is starting to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I don't think I've got my sort of infrastructure, if you like, down pat. What are some of the red flags that should be waving at them to say, you know, you need to have a conversation with someone about this?
One of the biggest red flags that I see, there are so many businesses that start out and they're undercapitalized.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a great idea, you have a great talent, but you may not have the funding to sustain you over a period of time. But
Mm.
because you're great at making widgets, you go ahead and start that business.
Yeah.
Um, so underfunding is one. Also, overdoing your insurance. Insurance is not a complete catch-all for
Mm.
business. And a lot of people think that I'm just going to get $1 million, $10 million policy, whatever that number is for your industry, and I'll be fine. Well, sometimes what you're doing is you're overpaying in premiums. So
Yeah.
part of what I do with your asset protection team, we get you the state minimum insurance premiums. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you were paying $1,000 before in insurance premiums, now you may be paying 500. So now you have an extra $500 a month to put into advertising or marketing, to put
Mm.
into a reserve account, to hire new employees. And a third thing is commingling assets. And that's one of the worst things to do because you do not want people to, reach into your personal assets to satisfy a claim or a judgment against you.
Yeah, absolutely. If anything goes wrong, it needs to be the blame of the company. So, what you're saying is if you've got a company that you are running and you have your name on any aspects of that, basically the company should own everything in the company. If you have your name attached to it, you've actually opened a little window that should there be a problem there, then someone else can then challenge you personally as opposed to the business.
Yes, and plaintiffs' attorneys love to see people make that mistake. So, yeah,
So your attorney hat on allows you to see that other side. That if you're representing that person, you'll go, well, that's the way that you can actually be extremely well compensated, which is the other side of the equation, which we're not wanting for our beautiful business owners on Women's Biz Podcast.
exactly.
So, what's one thing that you encourage our listeners to do today? Those people who've got a new startup, small business, what's one thing they can do today that's going to give them a bit of peace of mind?
I love to give people actionable nuggets of advice. And so, if you don't do anything else, and this is something that we do on the estate planning side, one, update your beneficiary designations
Mm,
because before you even start to plan, you need to have those updated and know where your documents are. And just
mm.
once you do that, make an annual commitment to meet with your professionals. So if you can just do those two things together, you are, leaps and bounds ahead of other business owners because we put it out, we put it off. We'll purchase insurance or other investment vehicles, and we just kind of put them to the side while we're building the business, but we need to look at them on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that's such fantastic advice. I hope you've been writing these tips down, listeners. And another thing I also found, because I've got a business, my husband's got a business, and we've got 5 adult children, and life, it gets big and complex at times. We also told our kids who our accountant is because the accountant knows all of our life in both businesses. And so that's another one that, even if the house burnt down and paperwork goes or they don't know your passwords, it's kind of like well, go to that source and at least they'll know who we've got insurance with, who owns different parts of the business, bits and pieces. So it's amazing to actually start looking in and go, who has the information that would be required should anyone need it. So
Right. And not
fantastic.
just and not just the accountant, but having these conversations with your family.
Mm,
Um, I've had people come to me and they don't want to talk about life insurance because if I talk about it, I'm going to die. You're not going to die. I promise you, you're not gonna die as soon as you talk about it. But it's, those are the types of conversations you need to have with family members and business partners.
Exactly. And they're the mature conversations that if you're not ready to have those, you're really not ready to grow a business that's going to be massive, because you're going to have to imagine, one day, what am I aiming for? What's the goal of how big this business could get to? How are you going to measure that success? What are you going to do with those funds? The other aspect is actually moving on to becoming a philanthropist. And if you're at a stage of your business that you're actually wanting to use those assets for good, that's a whole other arm that you're needing to do in a very intentional, strategic way.
Exactly. And it's something that we don't always think about. Now, one thing, and I know we touched briefly on insurance, especially if you are in a service-based business, consider long-term care insurance. For people that know my story, my mother passed away at 36. And, for the last 3 years of her life, she was in a nursing home. Who thinks in my 30s I'm going to need assisted, care? You just don't think about that. But if you are an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, and you are the business and you may be the breadwinner for your family, you may want to consider long-term care insurance and also a final expense plan for your family as well, so that they can have peace of mind to bury you. But we don't think about that a lot as entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. I think this has just been such a fantastic conversation today. I'm so thankful that you've been on my podcast, because our listeners are just going to be getting so many thoughts, hopefully some key actions to take in their own businesses to start thinking about yourself. I think, for a summary of our conversation, it's definitely see yourself personally, see yourself professionally, and see what that asset wealth portfolio is hoping to look like, but also how you are protecting it. If you don't have a clarity around how it's protected, I definitely encourage you to reach out to an expert to make sure that they can go over absolutely everything you have, even if it's not very much at this stage. I think that's one of the big risks. When you're like in your 20s or 30s, having a little family, you go, I don't even have much. But not much means you've also got a lot to lose if you lose a little bit. And so it's never too early to make sure. Plus, it gives you great practices to then, as you grow, you'll have those systems and processes in play so that you will be more protected moving forward.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for being on the show today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And to our listeners, definitely pop any questions you've got in your various areas of chat, whether you're on video, whether you're on our podcast platforms. We love having you join us, and we love your interaction. So once again, thanks for being today, and I will see you again next episode. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Women's Biz Podcast. I'm Annie Gibbins, founder and CEO of Women's Biz Global. And if you would like to fast track your future success, pop on over to womensbizglobal.com, where you can find out how our coaching, media and publishing opportunities are helping women just like you to become and be seen as the trusted authorities in their niche. Inquire today and start reining in the abundance you desire.